My name is Vince Weaver, and I was born in Lake City, but we moved to Georgetown when the mill opened up in the 30s. And I was born in 10/27/29. That puts me 92 years old. And that's been a great life so far. No, my brothers worked for the mill. My father had a furniture store here in Georgetown, antique furniture store. And we survived off of that. Went to school in Winnebago, graduated from Winnebago in '49. And it was a great time back then. And got drafted in 1953. 51, excuse me. Got drafted in '51 and went to Korea, and I came home in '53. And after 2 years, and then I stayed active. Hurricane Hazel came through, and I joined the Guard, and I stayed in the Guard and put about 37 years total in the military. And I advanced to the rank of sergeant major, command sergeant major, and I just enjoyed the men and enjoyed the service. At Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I had done basic there, and then went to Korea and came back, and the National Guard had different training at stations, and so I kept up with the Guard through their training, and I just enjoyed it, enjoyed the military. I was on the artillery unit, 155, and when I came back to Georgetown, this unit across the street was a 155 unit, so that's what got me involved with the National Guard. And they did the same thing we did in Korea.
And where were you going with that?
Yeah.
Where did you go with that?
We stayed, the National Guard changed from artillery, they went to different type units, and they ended up with, as well as I know, they had Sepel at that time, and then they went back to the towed artillery, what you had to tow with a tractor. But other than that, we just stayed here and dedicated our army on Andrews Highway. I mean, the Charleston Highway, and when I retired, that's where I retired from. Well, we started out. Fort Sill, Oklahoma was a training center for the Guard. If you had to go to any training, it was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. But then we had different exercises that we went to. Some in California, some in Kentucky. We went to Alaska one time, and there were just different places. About every other year, we had a different assignment. We would go different places. And we would marry in with some units, and then some units the whole battalion. Sometimes the whole battalion would go. But it was just a career all the way through. Well, any time that the county needed the Guard, they were called out, and we supported the county for a number of cases. Every hurricane that came out, we was out with them. And In the same time, I went to work at the post office, and I worked for the post office at the same time I was in the National Guard. So I retired from the post office in '87, and I went full-time with the Guard. At that time, they would allow me to go for 1 year full-time. And I went full-time to 90, and then I had to get out because of my age. Well, we just had, at that time we drilled on Monday nights. And we had about like a 4-hour drill on Monday night. And then later on, they went to drill on Saturday and Sunday. But at that time, we drilled every Monday night. But then they changed it and we drilled 1 weekend a month, Saturday and Sunday. So that gave us the opportunity to go to Fort Jackson or wherever we had to go to for the exercise and firing range, So we had a good time there. My family.
Yes.
Well, when I came back from Korea, the reason I didn't get in the Guard, I got married. And so Bailey and I got married in '53, and I got in the Guard, I think it's '55, whenever Hugo go through. And I lost Bailey in 2004. And so I've been raising my family ever since. Well, I won't tell all of it. No, I've got 3 children. Nancy, and Nancy's she's my pillow now that I look out for. And then Carter, Curtis is the next one. He went in the military, and he finished the civil, and he went to Germany and was in a couple exercises over there. And then he's back, and he retired and went to work for the CDC. And he's been with the CDC for about 10 years, and now he's attached to the Zaxby restaurants. They've got about 4 of them now. And Carter, well, you know what Carter's doing. Carter did well. And what makes me so good is he's got a son that's little Carter, and little Carter's with Sled. So both of them work together in Georgetown, Canada. I'm proud of both of them. But other than that, everything's great. Well, like I say, I was in the JCs, and I'm really active in the church. And I stayed pretty well busy in the church. And the National Guard kept me busy, but when I retired, I worked with Carter with the Sheriff's Department serving papers. And I've served papers for about, I guess, 17 years, 19 years, somewhere in there. And I finally retired last June. And because I didn't want to put him in jeopardy, with my age and all, so I went ahead and retired.
Where did you meet him in Georgetown?
At the corner of Orange and South Carolina National Bank, where the bank was there. And Mr. Baruch would be standing there waiting on Ernie to come take care of his whatever business. But he would just stand there and talk to us. We knew who he was, and we would just sell tickets on his car. Rodwell would let us have a gold-looking Cadillac, and we'd park it there and we'd sell tickets on it. And Mr. Baruch was a fine fellow, and he always wore riding pants and boots. And that's how he was dressed when he come to. And he was there, wasn't every Saturday morning kid. And then Miss Bell, she was over there. But the most interesting thing was, even in the early days, they had, you never knew who was in the cars, but they would have 2 or 3 Cadillacs that would come down St. James Street, going across the bridge. And you never knew who was in them, but I understand later on it was either Churchill, or the president, or whoever. A lot of state people, they'd be over there hunting, and they'd stay about a week or so. And then later on, we'd find out who was in the Cadillacs that passed by. And because back at that time, the railroad would back what do you call them? Cars. The car that people slept in, they would back one of them in, and they would have guards there, but Mr. Baruch wasn't there. He was always. But it was just an enjoyed time that time, and you'd see 2 or 3 Cadillacs going and 2 or 3 coming back. And they'd be bringing them back, and I understand that they would carry them to Andrews, King Street to get on, that was where the turnbuckle was, to get everything going back. It was some good days. That's about the only one that we knew actually. Now Vanderbilt, you know, he was over there, but no, we never did see him. But years ago, when I was in grammar school, I hopped curb at Whistling Pig, and we'd always see the convoys and the cars come out of there, and they would be. See, at that time, Church Street was dirt, and High Market Street was 17 went through, it came down the same thing. But then you'd see the convoys go down and pass in front of the old pig, and we'd say, well, there's some more of them dignitaries. But they were just good. That was my old days. Well, when we were drafted, we went to like Fort Knox, Kentucky, and we got drafted, and they wanted me to go to leadership school, and I just, at that time I had no knowledge of staying in the Army. I just did not. I wanted to come home and get married. So anyway, when I turned down leadership school, when I had to go to Korea, and we went in, went to California, and we went in at that time. The military had lost ground so far down that we had barely got into Pusan at the harbor, so we could get on the ground. And I was went in as by myself as a replacement, and I was sent to a unit that was attached. There was a unit that was there. It was an active duty unit. It was the 10th Corps, and I was sent to that unit through the military, and I sent to that artillery unit. That's how I got. And when I got there, I found out then they were National Guard unit, and they had been activated, and they'd been there for about a year and a half. But most of the Guard people had already rotated out. And, but we were attached to the 10th Corps, the 196th Field Artillery Battalion out of Memphis, Tennessee. And I stayed with them the 2 years that I was over there.
And what did you do while you were over there?
Artillery unit, same thing. That's what got me in the Guard here, because if there's artillery unit there, we did the same thing here that we would do it over there. We trained the same way about it. And other than that, then I came home and got married. And yeah, I'm here today. It was bad. It was bad, but Korea is. If you think about going to a battle from here to Andrews, you'd see houses, but that wasn't the case over there. There was no paved roads, no big cities or nothing. But people over there they lived in little mud huts and planted rice in the little rice fields. That's all it was. And as we advanced, as much as we could, we would just take ground and stay, and maybe the next day or the next night we'd take a little more ground, and we just advanced up to. It took us about a year to get up to the 38th parallel, and they put us on hold there because they didn't want us to go any further. So we had to go further once or twice, but then Ridgway at that time, he did not want us to go too far. That's odd that I've lost track of all of them. There was one good friend of mine, Georgetown, from something. But when I went to visit him, he had died the day before. But he and I kept in touch. But different ones rotated in, rotated out, and it was a good bunch of guys. Three injections. But it was I wish it had more pictures of the civilians over there. But we saw very few civilians as we finished lost ground and we retake ground, we just, where the civilians were, I can tell you this too. We went out, the menu for service from the south, for Army boys from the south, sauerkraut and weenies is just not a good menu. But anyway, one day the mess sergeant says, I want you to go with me. So we went down to a dumpster where after we served lunch that day, just Army boys just don't eat sauerkraut. We had a lot of garbage. So we carried it down to a dumpster where we dumped it out, and had no idea. But as we dumped it, there was mud flats and bunkers where they had that flat was where they grow rice, but it wasn't growing rice on account of the water. But children, I bet there was 8 to 10 little children that came out there running out, and they would fight each other over the weenies. And there was one little boy that he was too little to get in the middle of the fight, so he didn't get a weenie. And so I said, I got to get. So I went out there and scrambled through the garbage and got him a couple of weenies, and I put him in the Jeep with me and carried him back to my unit. And I kept that little fellow for about 3 months, and he would sleep. I had a bed for him right side of him, if we had a bed. But I kept him till there were so many orphanage that we had to turn them in. There were so many just Romans wrote, and they was getting killed and all like that. So I had to turn them back in. I missed that little fellow.
What was his name?
Josephine. I don't know why we named him Josephine, but it was just a name, you know.
Sure.
I don't know why they named him Josephine, but he was a little boy. But he was so little that he could take a 5-gallon can, empty can, and pick it up. But if you put water in it, he couldn't. But there were some days.
Sure, you made a good impact on his life for those few months.
Hmm?
I'm sure you made a great impact on his
Oh
life.
yeah, well I bet so.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, because that time we had interpreters that stayed with us, and after I got him, then interpreters started coming in and talked to him, and I think his parents just all got killed. He had nowhere to go, so they just sent him to a lot of them like that. Anyway.